So I'm going to share some of the details of the first game of the World Series that I played out, and so that you can understand, I guess a way to describe Pennant Race is that it is a math game masquerading as a baseball game. So I'll go through some of the details on the math of how I got the score for the first game that I did in my prior video. So they're at Shea Stadium. So the Oakland A's, they're at Oakland Coliseum. So the Mets are the first team to bat. So when I rolled the dice, I rolled 3 dice and I got a 4 on the white die, I got a 4 on the green die, and a 1 on the red die. So I'm basically going to be looking at 2 different charts to get the score because of the die roll. Because I got a doubles, which involved the white die, I'm looking at the power table. And then because the total of the 3 dice was 10 or less, I'm going to be looking at the relief pitching and the defense chart as well. So I'll go through the math that has to be done on this. I'm going to start with the power chart, and I look under 441 on the power chart to see whose power gets used. And it turns out to be the center fielder for the Mets. So that happens to be Don Hahn. And his power rating is 0. Like I said in the original, is the worst rating on his team. So that was unfortunate. So what I have to do is normally I would multiply the total of the dice, which is 9, times his power rating, which is 0. So I get a 0. If he would have been a 1, I would have got 9. But I take this result and add it to the team batting average. So I got a 0 plus my batting average number for the team chart is 23. So 23 and 0 is still 23. So what do I do with this? Well, I look at the white die, which is a 4, and I multiply it times the Oakland starting pitcher's pitching rating, which is a 5. So that gives me a 20. So now I'm going to take the team batting average of 23 and divide it by 20, and it comes out to 1.3, I think. And you deduct the fractions, so I get a 1. So I got 1 run for that. Now, because the roll was 10 or less, I have to check the relief and defense chart. And so I have to look under the 9, because that's what the total of the dice was. And I check the pitcher's endurance, and it's a 4. So Ken Holtzman is only a 3, so that means he can't pitch a complete game. He's going to need relief pitchers. How many relief pitches? Well, it's the number on the red die. So it was a 1, so I get to select 1 reliever for this calculation, and I'm going to pick my best one, Raleigh Fingers, who's a +1. So now I'm going to modify the white die, which was a 4, by 1 to make it into a 5, and then I multiply that times the starting pitcher's rating of 5, which gives me a 25. So when I take the Mets batting rating of 23 and divide it by the 25, it results in less than 1, so it rounds to 0. So I get no more runs for that. So I still only have 1 run for the Mets. Now I got to look under the defense column. And the defense calls for either the left fielder or the third baseman. And so I have to roll, I rolled the black die for odd or even, and it came up even. So that means I have to check the Oakland third baseman's defense. And it happens to be Sal Bando, who is an average third baseman. He's a +0. So I'm going to add that to the white die, which was a 4, multiply that times Ken Holtzman's rating of 5. The result is 20. So then I take the Mets' 23 batting average, divide it by 20, and it's 1. So the Mets score a second run. So that's a lot of calculations to come up with the Mets scoring 2 runs in this first game. Then the A's get to bat, and I roll the 3 dice again, and this time I roll a 6, 6, and a 4. And one of the 6s was on the white dice, which means I use the power chart. So if I look under the 664 result, on the power chart, it says player's choice. So I can select any player out of my starters. And of course, I'm going to select Reggie Jackson because he has the best power rating, which is a 5. So now what I do is I total the dice, 664, and get a sum of 16, and I multiply it times Reggie Jackson's power number of 5. So 16 times 5 is 80. I'm going to take the 80 and add that to the Oakland team's batting value, which is 25. So 25 plus 80 is 105. Now I'm going to take the white die, which was a 6, and I'm going to multiply it times John Matlack's pitcher value, which is a 4. So 6 times 4 is 24. So now I divide Oakland's 105 by 24, and I get a 4.3. So I drop the fractions. Oakland gets 4 runs, and the final score of Game 1 is Oakland 4, New York 2. And yes, I'll add, having a calculator helps with these. You can make mistakes very easily, as I'm sure I probably did at some point during the game. But I know this math will scare a lot of people away from wanting to play this game, and I totally get that. But I did want to share this so that you would have a little bit of insight into how not simple this simple game is. Anyway, thank you for watching. Something else that I wanted to mention that I did as a modification in this game, one of the things that the game does allow you to do, it gives each team a minor league rating, depending on how well developed their minor league system is. And you can spend those points to roll up a fictitious minor league player if you want to. And, that's a way to play out, the general manager type experience. Now, what I did when I rated my other seasons, what you'll find is that your roster of 25 players doesn't include all the people who played that season with the team. There were many other players. So what I did is I kept the top 10 pitchers by appearances and the top bench players by appearances. And then everybody that fell below that line, I made into a fringe player. And they're listed on the team charts, but they basically don't have any ratings because a lot of them, didn't have very many at-bats. So what I allowed to do in playing out this game is that once per month, somebody can get rid of, release a player that has very poor ratings if they want to from their bench, usually is where they want to do it, or out of their bullpen or a starting pitcher. And then they can pick one of their fringe players, depending on what position they happen to be in. And then you can roll a die on an 11 to 66 chart that I made, which I'll show here. It's similar to the one in the game for the fictitious players. And then you can get some kind of random, stats for these guys, and they may actually turn out better than they did historically, or they may be worse than they did historically. But as fringe players, it doesn't matter, and they don't come out with unrealistic ratings. I don't have, that typical one that I remember in 1978, Sam Bowen got up to bat, I think 3 times for the Red Sox and hit 1 home run. So his card shows a .333 batting average, and if he gets a hit, it's a home run. So it's not a reasonable card to use in the game unless you only let him get to bat 3 times, and then you can't use the card anymore. So this is a system that I kind of came up with. If anyone wants it and has this game, I certainly would send you a copy. Anyway, thanks for watching this addendum to Pennant Race.